Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to do a follow-up on the Warm Audio WA-1B. This time we're going to compare it to the Universal Audio Tube-Tec CL1B, which is in collaboration with Soft-Tube. So we're going to listen to it on a snare, maybe on a vocal, maybe something else. We'll see how long the video is. Last video, if you haven't seen it, we just did the WA-1B on its own. Listen to it on a bunch of stuff. Click the link in the description box if you want to check that out. And let me know what you think in the comments below about that. This time I just want to compare it to the plugin because a lot of you guys have asked me about it. Plus, we've done a few of these on the channel, and quite frankly, I've never heard in all the hardware that I personally own where the plugin counterpart sounded better to me than the hardware. Sometimes it's a little closer than others, but the hardware always seems to edge out. I'm interested to see how this works. So that's what we're going to do. So somewhere on the screen, you should see the plugin. You should see the Warm Audio WA-1B. And what we're going to do is, and the first thing I'll say is that the settings on the compressor themselves are a little different. To put the settings exactly in the same spot, you don't get the same compression reaction for whatever reason. So I tried to level match this and do this in a way where we were getting the same amount of compression, the same kind of release time, to see, just to get the compressors to kind of react the same. Now this software one is based on the Tube-Tec, which is modeled against a Tube-Tec, and the Warm Audio, you know, is built based on a Tube-Tec, but it's not modeling the same exact unit, obviously, so they could react a little bit different, but nevertheless, this should be a good test. So how do I have this set up, just so you know? So the first thing we're going to listen to this on is a snare drum. And the reason why we're going to listen to it on a snare is if you watched the last video where we were listening to just the WA-1B on a couple of different sources, the one area that I was super surprised and really loved the way that the WA-1B sounded was on the snare. Loved it on the snare. That's why we're going to do it on a snare. So basically what I did is I took the snare track in the DAW in Studio One and I just duplicated it so it was exactly the same. And they're being routed out. One's being routed out to track or fader number 2 on the console, and one is fader number 3. And you might be able to see this on the overhead camera. I'm not sure, but I have a piece of console tape here on the armrest. Number 2 is the hardware, right? And number 3 is the plug-in in the DAW. And then what I'm going to be able to do is just at the flip of a switch, I can just switch back and forth so you're hearing the plug-in, the hardware, the plug-in, the hardware. Somehow I'll be able to hopefully put text on the screen so you know which is which. But I'm going to try to do this in a way that is, you know, as fair and balanced as possible and as accurate as possible. So anyway, we're going to start on the plugin. So the plugin here, basically what I have going on here is about 3 dB of compression, 2.5, 3 dB of compression, which is pretty much what I would, you know, typically set it out on a snare for the most part, especially a snare like this, which is play pretty consistent. We're using a slow attack and a medium release. Now on the plugin, you'll see that the release, it's 12 at straight noon, where on the hardware, it's more towards a faster release. And that was the only way I could get the two needles to kind of respond the same. The release is different quite a bit. The threshold is slightly different from one to the other. And again, I messed around with this the best I could. Again, could someone probably do this a little more accurately than me? Maybe so, but this is what we got. And we're running it at a 4:1 ratio here. That's in the same spot on the hardware as it is on the plugin. The alpha volume is the same. We're using it in the manual mode. So we have attack and release, and we have the plugin on 100% wet, which is what we want to do. I don't think we have a blend knob on the hardware, so we should be good there. And let's just see what we have. So we're starting with the plugin, and then you'll see me switch and I'll put the text on the screen and blah, blah, blah. So here we go. So we're going to start with the Tube-Tec plugin, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so what I instantly hear is the hardware. The hardware sounds way better than the plugin in this example. And again, the release time, I feel like I want to tweak it a little bit more, but it's pretty damn close. Here is what I hear in the room, if you don't hear it over YouTube. And this is one of the things that I loved about it in the last video. As soon as I heard this on a snare, I said, that sounds great. It adds a lot of body to the snare. You can hear the extension of the room a little bit and the sustain and the reverb a little bit. And it sounds a little bit more, not a little on this example, to be honest with you, quite a bit more depth. In the plugin, it seems very flat, very more forward and very linear. It doesn't have this front to back thing. It has kind of this straight across where everyone's kind of standing even and straight across. It's the same kind of sensation or dynamic or what I would hear in the past when we would always compare plugins to the hardware counterpart. It was always that kind of thing where the hardware just sounded like it was bigger, fatter, fuller, more 3D, and the plugin sounded good, but it seemed like it was more flat and linear. It was almost like a 2D versus a 3D kind of a sound, if that makes any sense at all. So listen to it again. Again, I'm going to check this release a little bit and just try to get the needles to respond exactly the same. Again, this is not a perfect science, and I got to be honest, it took me a while just to dial this in. This plugin's a little wonky. So here we go. So right now we are on the hardware. We will go back to the plugin. We are on the plugin right now. Here we go. Yeah, it's totally different. It adds so much tone to the snare, where the plugin really doesn't add that kind of tone, and it doesn't have that 3D thing. So that's on snare. Huge difference. Way prefer the hardware over the plugin. Way prefer it. Give me a second to come back. Let's try the same thing on acoustic guitar, just because that's what we did in the last one. The other thing I'll make sure you understand as well, because some of you may ask, because tonally the snare sounded so much different. The EQ on both of these channels on the console are 100% identical. They're on the meters coming in on the console. They are coming in exactly the same spot. And in the room, level mats, they sound like they're the same volume to me. They really do. The difference is that on the hardware track, you got more body to the snare, and tonally it's different, but everything else is the same. It's actually pretty remarkable. Let's see if we get that same thing when we try it on an acoustic guitar. Be right back. Okay, we're back. So now we have two acoustic guitars here, 15 and 16. 15 is the hardware, 16 is the plugin. Again, doing about 5 to 70, 60 dB of compression. Again, tried to get 4:1 ratio, tried to get everything, reacting the same way. Level mats in the room, it sounds the same level-wise. And yeah, that's it. EQ on the console is identical on both channels, are coming in perfectly on the meters. So here we go. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be able to just switch. Hopefully I'll be able to put the text on the screen so you guys can see it. Let's see. So we're going to start on, just like last time, we will start with the plugin, and then we will go to the hardware and back and forth. Here we go. Here's the plugin. Okay, so on the acoustic guitar, the hardware seems to be not as bottom heavy. It seems a little bit thinner on the bottom. There's a little bit more thickness on the plug-in. But again, you get a little bit more of this depth thing with the hardware. Not as much as on the snare. It's not as obvious, but it wasn't as obvious when I just did the hardware all by itself in the last video. I said the biggest difference to me was on the snare. The acoustic and the bass was okay, but the gap wasn't as big. So that's what we got. So again, I think I got everything reacting the same. I'm going to try to maybe do a little, it feels like there's a little bit more compression happening on the plugin. I'm going to try to get it to sound the same. And we're done just looking at the meter, but can I get it to sound a little bit more similar? Let's try. We're on the plugin now. Yeah, so again, you get it's a little less boomy now on the plug-in side. The plug-in and the hardware seem a little bit lot closer than the snare drum. A lot closer than the snare. But I still prefer the hardware on this because it just feels like, again, there's a little bit more depth. And again, I don't know exactly why that happens with the hardware, but always with hardware, it seems like we get a little bit more depth. And at the plug-in, just seems like it's a little closer and it's a little more linear and it's not as deep. So that's the acoustic guitar. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Again, this plugin, I will say this plugin is finicky. You just got to touch it and it just responds completely. Where on the hardware, you have a lot more wiggle room to get things to respond. There's a lot more of a taper. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just this particular version of the plugin. It's the only one I have, so I can't do another one. Anyway, let's try the lead vocal last, because that was the other place where I thought there was a pretty stark difference when we just did the hardware of how I liked it on the lead vocal. So we'll try it on the lead vocal. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So now I got this on a lead vocal. So same thing, lead vocal, duplicated, channel 24, first channel is the hardware, second channel is the plugin. Again, very difficult to get this plug. I'll tell you, even if you love the sound of the plugin, I just hate the controls on it. It is so incredibly difficult to get this thing to react exactly like the hardware. It's so finicky. The hardware was so much easier to dial something in that sounds good. I tried the best I could. It's not a perfect test, okay? This is just a point of reference for everybody. We're gonna start on the plugin as usual. I will switch back and forth. In real time, they sound level matched in the room. I got about the same amount of compression. I got the release to work the best I could, but they're not perfectly the same exact speed in the way the meter is responding, but it's pretty close. Anyway, here we go. We're gonna start with the plugin. Here we go.
In this little frame, but the sun won't shine on me until we meet again. And it's a new day dawning. Yesterdays are gone. I never leave, I turn away, 'cause I see your smile in this little frame. But the sun won't shine on me until we meet again. And it's a new day dawning. Yesterdays are gone. I never leave, I turn away.
Same kind of dynamic. The hardware sounds a little bit more this depth-wise this way. It's not as linear and flat. The plugin here sounds a little bit more compressed than the hardware. And again, I've messed with this a bunch to try to get it between the threshold and tacker release. And like I said, this is a finicky plugin, man. Finicky. The hardware is not this finicky. I don't know why. It just isn't. The plugin sounds okay, but again, I get that sense of depth and the way it just kind of thickens up the chest a little more on the hardware. And it just seems like there's a little bit more space around him than with the plugin. It seems everything's a little bit more this way than this way. One more time. Here we go. We're starting on the plugin.
I see your smile in this little frame, but the sun won't shine on me until we meet again. And it's a new day dawning. Yesterdays are gone. I never leave, I turn away, 'cause I see your smile in this little frame, but the sun won't shine on me until we meet again.
Yeah, there's just a richness to the hardware, especially in the low mids of his voice where the chest is. It just sounds more rich, a little more natural, a little bit more 3D. The plugin doesn't sound bad, and I suppose if you can get past the finickiness of it and you really wanted to tweak it in, could you get it to sound exactly the same? Yeah, you probably could. Or you could probably get it close enough. But it's something about the 3D and the depth around it that just seems more natural to me in the hardware. And again, the biggest example of that was on the snare. So that's a quick little test on snare, acoustic, and lead vocal with the Tube-Tec CL1B by Universal Audio / Softtube versus the Warm Audio WA-1B. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Let me know if you own the plugin or if you own the hardware or both. And if you've done any testing on your own, I'd love to know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching this video. And until the next video where we take a look at some other cool gear and plugins and workflow and hybrid and analog mixing, I've been Dave with Mixing Music Analog and MixingMusicAnalog.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching me today, and I'll see you in the next video.